Well, it's Super Bowl weekend, and when we're talking championships, we have to bring on the state champion head coach of the Lena-Winslow Panthers, head coach Ric Arand. Coach, thanks so much for being on View from the West podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me on. Haven't done a lot of this, so we'll see how this rolls. But yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, you were a little worried, I think, about the questions going in, but I assure you, there's no math, there's no science. That's not my thing. So I'll stick to football. I think you'll be comfortable with that.
Good deal. That sounds good.
All right, sounds good. Coach, before we jump into fall 2021, which was obviously a great season, another banner year for you guys, let's go back in time a little bit. You're state champs in 2019. 2020 is canceled. You get to the spring of 2021, and it's a shortened, condensed season. But you're already going into the year. I think you knew that Jennings Dunker was out. Now an impact player for you from the state title the year before. He's now at the University of Iowa. So you're already without him. You get this huge matchup in week 1 against Princeton. Mari Roby looks electric in the first quarter. Then he goes down with what at the time appeared to be a bad leg injury. It did turn out to be that way, unfortunately. So now I understand. I think, did you guys go 5-1 in the spring though?
4-1. We ended up having a game canceled. Dakota
Okay.
had COVID or something. I can't remember.
Sure. So the Princeton game.
4-1.
Yeah, the only game you lost was that Princeton game.
Yes.
But either way, take me back to that night leaving Princeton, knowing that this season already is kind of a weird year anyway, because there's no playoffs. You're without your impact senior. Now you're without Mari Roby, potentially looking into the fall when things go for real. What were you and your coaches and your players talking about that night? That had to be kind of tough.
Well, even going back a little further than that, the whole season was tough. It like you said, it was an odd season. You try to make the most of it. I think the kids responded well to the COVID shortened spring season. Me as a coach, I didn't so much. And, in talking with my assistant coaches, at one point in time, I'm like, hey, I'm just kind of not feeling it. Are you guys, and they're like, yeah, it just doesn't seem right. The weather was horrible to practice in. Everything just did not feel like football season, except when you're actually on the field. So going down to Princeton, we really had big expectations coming into that year. We had Jennings Dunker coming back. We didn't know till really right before the season started that he was definitely going to be out for the year. We were hoping at some point we could get him back, but it was definitely in his best interest. We go down to Princeton. Princeton had a great team. They were probably well on their way to competing for a 3A state championship. That was one of the better teams we've played over the years. But a kid like Mari, when Mari's healthy, he can keep you in any game. We were really young up front. We were really young outside of Mari and Luke Benson, to be honest with you, at quarterback. Those couple guys coming back from the state championship team. And Mari I think he had, a handful of carries for 70 some yards or something in the first quarter and a great touchdown run. And then he went down right on our sideline. We knew right away it was serious. Dr. Lyles, one of our team doctors, was there. And I think it was even more serious than he thought at the time. But so that put a damper on things. But I tell you what, our kids really responded well and played hard. And I think that game right there not only set the tone for the rest of the year, but we played so many young kids in that game that I think it set the tone for this past 2021 season as well. And just because we came out and we battled, we could have laid down and Princeton could have put a running clock on us real easy because they definitely had us. They had us outmanned. They had us out talented. They had us out everything, And but our kids battled hard, and really, I think, like I said, it set the tone for the rest of the season. We beat some really good teams down the stretch. A really good Galena team, a really good UPEC team. Again, a game there that we probably shouldn't have even been in, and we stayed in it and battled. And then I think that really led to our success this past season because of the depth that we developed.
Yeah, I was just going to ask about that. On the positive side, looking ahead then, once you get through that spring, what did you see in the summer, in those workouts leading into that fall? It was it was a short off season, but what did you see from having real game experience in that spring with some of those younger players?
Yeah. Just we gained a lot of experience, and I think we actually ended up having more starters returning for 2021 than it's even possible to put on the field, because I think we had, for example, on offense, I think we had more than 11 possible starters returning, just because, Mari was a starter at one point in time. He went down. Jake Zeal stepped in and played for him on offense and defense. Jake goes down with a broken collarbone at East Dubuque. So then we bring in another young kid to start. Zach White started at corner, brought in another young kid to start at running back. And so we ended up getting, out of Mari going down, we ended up getting 3 starters, on either side of the ball out of that one injury. Ethan Fye really came into his own. He was our leading rusher in the spring. He was our leading rusher up until about the end of the regular season this year, while Mari was kind of still nursing that injury and getting healthy. So those guys really stepped up big for us. And but yeah, I think the depth that we developed over time and all the experience of all those young kids playing really, really helped us.
Yeah, I want to take a quick side note. Talk about Ethan Fye. That's a kid that, really did the work for you in the spring. And then in the fall, like you talked about, when Mari was still kind of coming back, he really led the way for you guys rushing the ball. Did statistically lead the way rushing the ball. And then come playoff time, I think Mari was 100%, and he really showed everybody in the state, what he could do. And so you weren't seeing Ethan's name so much in the headlines, in the stats, but just give a little shout out to him, because he really did a lot of the work for a long time when you needed him to.
Yeah, he did. And he did it on both sides of the ball. He did it in the backfield for us. He did it at outside linebacker for us for 2 years. Just an absolute great kid, great work ethic. He's going to go in. He's going to become a Marine, but he's on a full ride to, I think, probably U of I before that with a big scholarship from the Marines. So that kind of explains his work ethic, his intelligence, and things like that. But I give hats off to him because he really came into his own, and we needed him to in the spring season. We had no choice. I mean, we had nobody left when Mari went down, and then a few weeks later at East Dubuque, Jake Zeal went down. Ethan was our guy, and he accepted that role, and he got punished. I mean, everybody knew it was going to him. We didn't have anybody else really to give it to. And he accepted that role. And then this past off season, when Mari was rehabbing, Mari really was, he didn't get to go, I think, the clearance from the doctors till late July. And so, he had been in our summer workouts all summer. We work out Monday, Wednesday, Friday mornings at 6 a.m. And then he would come in on Tuesday and Thursday mornings just to do some recovery and some rehab on his injured leg. And Ethan was with him the whole time. Ethan would come in on Tuesdays and Thursdays with him. So they got a great relationship, great friendship. But more importantly, they were there for each other together. And then this year, again, you could tell Mari was not at full strength all season long, really, of the regular season. And in addition to that, him being back on the field, he really became a marked man. People didn't care that he wasn't necessarily healthy. They just knew what he could do with the ball in his hands. And so as people really, really game planned for Mari, that allowed for Ethan to really take over. And, he was basically a 1,000-yard rusher right around there in the regular season. And then, of course, Mari hit stride in the playoffs, and we got a little bit better up front, and, things just took off.
Yeah, we'll get there in a second. Things took off pretty well there come playoff time. You cruise through the regular season, the early part of the regular season. You drop a tight game to Dupec. But I think the game that really kind of turned heads for our area, for maybe around the state, was the Week 9 game against Forreston. Forreston came in and knocked you off. And I think that, they had a good season, but I think it surprised everybody because you guys were the favorites, going into Class 1A at that point. And maybe even after that loss, you were still the favorite. But take me to that night. And, what was the tone in the locker room? What was the talk? Because this is week 9. The playoffs are a week away, and you never want to lose a football game, but especially at that point in the season.
Yeah. We talk every week, every day at practice about getting better, about being, and I know it's an old cliche, be better, today than you were yesterday, and be better this Friday night than you were last Friday night. And, we talk about those things all the time, and maybe we talk about it too much, but, there were different parts of the season. I thought early on during the season, we were really good. We were getting better. And, then I think, we run into Dupec, and number one, Dupec was really good. So I don't want to take anything away from them. But, in a close ball game, I think we couldn't have played any worse. And again, a lot of it was them on the other side of the ball, doing what they did to us. But, close game where we felt we didn't play very well. We didn't play very well in the ensuing weeks to come. And so going into Forreston, I had been down to see Forreston on a Saturday against East Dubuque. They just looked kind of okay. And I think, at that point in time when we played them on that week 9 Friday night, I think that game against us meant everything to them. And we weren't playing very well. And we kind of laid an egg. And again, hats off to them. Probably being on the wrong side of it, probably the greatest drive I've ever been involved in. And that last drive, I think they went 91 yards in however many minutes. And that was just like a knife slowly going into you. And then they keep turning it a little bit. And, just a grueling drive. And, we weren't very good that week, and I knew we weren't very good that week going into it. And that the end result of that game was probably the best thing that could happen to us, because we really challenged our kids the next 5 weeks. Typically, I would say that during the playoffs, we kind of taper things back a little bit. We're not as physical during practice. We don't go quite as long as we typically would in a practice. Keep our legs, and we didn't let up. From that opening week against Aurora Christian, we had our foot on the pedal, and we worked our kids hard. They responded well, and I think it was every Sunday when we beat as a coaching staff, then we'd say, keep our foot on the pedal. Don't let up on these guys. Don't let them relax. And like I said, they responded really well.
Yeah, so you talked about the huge win over Aurora Christian in the first round. Then you get the rematch with Forreston. Now, one of my favorite parts of doing this podcast, talking to coaches, is I love talking about, getting into your brain that week, about the game planning, about the strategy. What was your approach going into that rematch? And what did you see? Did you see anything X's and O's wise that you needed to adjust? Or what were you talking about as coaches going into that rematch against Forreston?
Well, really, X's and O's, when we play Forreston, there's not going to be a whole lot of secrets. Neither one of us change anything really all year long. You might add a little wrinkle here or there, but that was the game our kids really wanted. We went down, we scouted that game. They played down on a Friday night against Galena, the first round game, and a few of us coaches were down there, and probably 8 or 10 players. And they stood by us, and at one point in time, Galena was threatening late. We said, hey, we might get a shot at Galena. And our kids are like, no, we want to play Forreston. So that kind of set the tone right there before we ever played Aurora Christian. And so having been beat up front like they beat us in week 9, and that doesn't happen to us a whole lot, but what they did to us on the offensive defensive line scrimmage week 9 really set the tone for the second round playoff game, week 11. And it was pretty self-motivating all week long, to be honest with you.
Yeah, absolutely. You go on to you win that one against Forreston. Mari Roby has a great game in that one. But I think, man, Mari Roby really turned heads in the Fulton game the following week. In the quarterfinals, he goes 109 yards and 2 touchdowns on his first 2 carries. Coach, you ever seen anything like that? You've had a lot of good running backs, but the start to that game, just the way he was shot out of a cannon was really impressive.
Yeah, he just hats off to him because he worked so hard. A lot of it was on his own. He's going to physical therapy. You could see him each week. He'd get a little bit better, a little bit better. Um, I'm trying to think what game it was in the Forreston game. I think he got caught from behind, and that's pretty frustrating for a kid who's about a 4.55 kid in the 40, knowing he knows what he can do and he just couldn't quite do it. So that's pretty frustrating for him. But just the work ethic he has, and to get to that point to be able to have 2 carries for 100 and some yards was pretty incredible. And so I wouldn't expect anything less out of him. Let's put it that way, because that's just how he is. And he's a great representation of our football program because he works hard. He's a good student. He's he's a class act in the classroom, on the field, off the field, everything. And I wish we had him for about 10 more years. So.
Yeah, I wish I could watch him play high school football for about 10 more years, man. He did some things that was so much fun to watch. I mean, these highlights were just incredible in every game. So let's jump into the state championship game. You're going up against Carrollton, 3 first half turnovers, which not ideal, but when you needed a spark, here we go again. Mari Roby, 3 touchdowns in the second quarter, in a wild second quarter. Just take me through the emotions of that first half. I mean, at first it was like, well, what's going on here? And I was walking the sideline and, you could sense frustration building amongst you guys. And then, Mari Roby kind of said, no, I got this, and just went to work. It was impressive.
Right. We didn't have a problem moving the ball. We were doing what we wanted to do. We were getting first downs. We were rolling the clock, putting ourselves in good field position. And it seemed like, every time we got into a good position, there was a fumble. We had the interception, a couple of fumbles. At one point in time, probably late first, early second quarter, I felt like we were in control. But every time we kind of gained control, then we'd fumble it. We'd throw the pick. We'd do something. And, I remember saying to our kids 2 different times after we scored, before our kick coverage took the field, hey, we're fine. The kids were frustrated. You sense that too. And I'm like, we're fine. We can't play any worse than we are right now. So if this is the worst we're going to play, and we're still leading in a state championship game, so be it. And I made the comment to several people at halftime and following the game that it wasn't the best game we've played all year, but it was good enough at that point in time. And it's kind of a double-edged sword because it's kind of frustrating. You get into a state championship game, you want to play your A game. There's a lot of people there watching. There's a lot of people watching on TV, online, live streaming it. And so you really don't want to show that performance. But we played well enough to win. At times we played great, and at times we, like I said, putting the ball on the field, on the ground and stuff like that. But again, at the end of the day, it was a state championship game, and it was good enough to win, and we brought home trophies.
Yeah, Coach, let's talk a little bit about, the rest of your offense. Luke Benson, an experienced quarterback who really seemed to be kind of a leader, amongst that huddle, when you guys are on the field offensively. We talked about Ethan Fye and Jake Zeal and Gage Dunker, Brady Ilder, so many names that could run the ball for you and run it well behind a really talented offensive line. All that being said, all those names being thrown out there, what made this offense stand out to you? What do you remember about this offense from this past year that when you would set up plays, when you would get out on the field and say, wow, this is really, they really got something here?
Well, I thought we were actually able to do a lot of different things, even though it doesn't look like it on film. It doesn't look like it when you're there watching us. Very rarely do we just base block something up front. We're pulling something. We're running down scheme, power scheme, counter trace scheme, wham, a lot of different stuff that we're running that people don't understand or see. And we were able to do a lot of those things just because of the personnel we had. For example, I thought most of the year Mari was our best blocker at running back, and when he wasn't as healthy as he was at the end of the year, he was leading up in there and he was just hammering linebackers, or he was kicking out the ends and things like that. So he was really, really good at not only running the football, but also blocking. I think late in the year, Gage Dunker really became that hammer as a lead blocker when Mari got healthy and was able to carry it more. Brody Mann at tight end, he allowed us to do a lot of things that we aren't always able to do just because he was a great run blocker at the point of attack. He was great at play action pass, able to get out and run routes, and with his length and his great hands, we were able to do a lot of things. We only threw it probably 50 times on the year, but when we did, we were able to accomplish a lot of things that we set out to do when we do decide to throw it. And Luke was always ready for that. He was a 3-year starter for us. When he was a sophomore, he really didn't have to do a whole lot. You had Sean Ormiston, you had Isaiah Bruce in the backfield. You had a lot of guys you could just hand it off to and let them go. And so when we threw play action, it was a home run or nothing when Luke was a sophomore. And then, as he matured as a junior and then into this year, he really became more of that leader on the field in the huddle, and which is exactly what we needed him to do.
Yeah, Coach, you referenced Brody Mann on the offensive side of the ball. Tell me about him on defense. Obviously, ended up being an all-state football player this year, so huge credit for him on that. He really, I felt like, led the way in that second half to shut down Carrollton. He had a couple big plays back-to-back, getting to the Carrollton offense in the backfield. How crucial was he for this team? I mean, looking defensively on the side of the ball.
Oh, just incredible. He really surprised us as a junior, how well he played. Again, he got all that experience in that shortened season that, on both sides of the ball. And then this year, we knew he was going to be really good. In the Dupac game, his junior year, first pass of the game by the Hoffman kid, I think it was his first and only interception of the year, and Brody just made a great play on it, and really showed his athleticism. The ball was well overthrown most linebackers, and Brody went up and got it, dropped right into the perfect zone. Great run stopper and perimeter run. He's really deceptively fast. And he was really our leader on defense because it seemed like when something needed to be done, he was the guy that stepped up. And he had the huge sack late in the game against Carrollton in the second half there. He just made plays all year long. He was able to get off blocks, beat blocks, and make plays at or behind the line of scrimmage. And we've had a lot of good players come through Lee Win, and I don't know if he's the best linebacker we've ever had, but there's nobody that was better than him. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, like I kind of referenced Luke Benson on offense. It felt like on defense, he was the heartbeat. He was the guy kids were looking at. Opponents were looking at him too for the plays he was making. So I always kind of, saw him as kind of that leader on your defense. Coach, overall, it's your 5th state championship team. What characteristics stand out? How do you remember this team? What defines it for you?
I think they just got better. As a group, they were put in a bad situation to begin with, like every other kid in America with the whole COVID thing. Our kids are workout freaks. They're in the weight room and on the track all the time. And that never stopped in that time, in that COVID time. Even though we weren't doing stuff at home, they were all over the place. We had kids going to gyms that weren't even open. We have a deal here in Lena that's similar to like an Anytime Fitness where you can code in, and they were still going into that gym even though they probably weren't supposed to be. They were working out at guys' houses. I gave weights out and bands out and stuff to kids, and they were doing makeshift weight rooms in their basements and their garages. One kid's got a nice setup in their horse barn, and so the thing is, it's been such a ride here over the last probably 15 years that kids have just, every year it's a new group of kids, but it's the same thing. They just pick up where the last group left off. And this group, they never skipped a beat. And when they knew, the one thing we really had going for us this year is they knew they were going to start a regular season. But at any point in time, I thought, COVID could put an end to this. So, we reminded them of that a lot. And they just responded. They played every day like it was their last day. And I think, it's a group of kids, this group of seniors that has always been really, really tight. There's about 14, maybe 15 of them, something like that. They've always been a great group. They've always been best of friends. They hang out on the field. They hang out off the field. So it's just for them to finish it off like they did. It's kind of a fitting end to that chapter.
Yeah. Coach, you talked about the weightlifting and, how, your kids are weightlifting freaks. And I think that goes back, years in this program. Me and Mitch, on the podcast, love talking about NUIC football because, we say it without any hesitation. It's the best football conference in the state. The level of competition is the best you're going to find anywhere. What separates Lena-Winslow? What has separated your program? You talked about weightlifting, but, back when you started to where you're at now, what do you think has been some key factors to getting you guys to where you're at?
A couple of things, I think. Most of it has not a whole lot to do with me. First of all, Kevin Milder, our defensive coordinator, has been with me since the day I started. He was one of the first guys I hired. Connor Arndt, who's been our sophomore coach for Connor's been coaching here for probably 35 years. He's going to step down this year, but come back as a volunteer, hopefully. Kyle Benson, our offensive coordinator, since the day he moved back to Lena, he's a Lee-Win grad. He's been with us. John Mankuski has been a volunteer coach with us for probably 20 years. I don't know that for a fact, but he's volunteered. He volunteered before his son was in school, through his son being in school, and his son's been out of school now for probably going on 10 years here pretty soon. So we've had that camaraderie amongst our coaching staff that has really helped. I think the other thing is we've never been afraid of change. If I go to Kevin, our defensive coordinator, and say, hey, take a look at this. I think, maybe this is something we should look at. I don't necessarily care that we do that, but it's out there. And I think our guys have always been willing to change for the betterment of our program. And we do the same thing in our strength and speed program. Austin Rickles, our head track coach, he's also a volunteer coach for us with the fresh soft and the varsity. He runs all of our speed stuff. And, I just turned that over to him. He took it by the reins. We do it every day, in the off season, during the season, all things like that. So I don't think there's anybody on our staff, and we have a staff of 12 coaches that includes 4 junior high guys. But as soon as the junior high season's over, they come right to us. They're at practice almost every day. They're running a scout team during the playoffs. They're doing something, helping out on the sidelines. And I think it's always, it's what's best for the team in terms of all of those guys as well. And, to me, that's what has kept it the way it is. And I think with the emergence of, when I first took over, Galena was kind of ruling the conference. Stockton was still pretty good. And so we had to really work to try to get to their level. And then it was Dakota. And Coach Lano, built an incredible program there. And we really had to bust our butt, especially in our strength conditioning program, to try to get to their level. And we finally got to that. Forreston kind of did the same thing, coming back at us, as well as Dupec. And, I think you have to be open to change, and you really have to try to keep that chip on your shoulder in order to stay at their level. So I think like you said, being the best small school conference in the state, I think to raise your level at all times and stay on the top is a hard thing to do, but I think it's also the best motivator. I've had this conversation, I think, with Coach Freed from Galena before. The best thing for our conference is for Galena to be good every year. People will say to me, I think Galena's going to be down, or Dakota's going to be down a little bit this year. That's good. I'm like, no, it's not. The best thing, if we could play a 9-game schedule in our 10-team conference, that everybody was really equal every year, I mean, we're going to do some really good things. But it ups the ante a little bit, so that you got to stay at the top of your game. You got to really work hard to get there and then stay there. But, so like I said, Coach Freed and I've talked about it before, the best thing for our conference is for Galena to be good, for Stockton to be good, for Lee-Win to be good. Dakota, you want all of these schools to continue to produce talent. In the long run, you want to beat them, but that's a motivating factor right there.
Well, Coach, you said a lot of this program success doesn't necessarily involve you, but I'll put you on the spot and say, going back to your first season to looking at now, how have you changed as a coach? What do you look back on and say, oh my God, I can't believe I did it this way? Or, what are the things you've changed?
Most people always tell you, I still don't know what I'm doing. And that's fine, because there's times when you question yourself, but I can look back on that first year and go, I had no idea what I was doing. I think you have all these grand ideas and things like that, but as a program, we were in a pretty good place when I took over. John Wallace had been the head coach for a handful of years prior to me taking over. And John left teaching at a young age and wanted to make more money, and kudos to him. But when he took the football program over, it was not in very good shape. I think they had embarked on three straight winless seasons, an 0-27 streak. And he really did a good job of getting the program back to being fun for the kids. He was getting some kids out. And so really when I took over and Coach Myler and Coach Arndt with me, it was kind of an easy thing to do at the time, because kids were looking to get better. They were looking for a change. At that point in time, Lee-Win was really content with, if we got to the playoffs, great. And so that was a good place to be, because it was a good time to take over, to try to take it to the next level. And it took us a long time to get there. I mean, we became competitive, I think, almost immediately. But to get to the point of going, okay, we're going to go to the playoffs and we're going to stay in the playoffs for a little run, took us a while. And now it seems like if we get to the playoffs, or I shouldn't say if, but when we get to the playoffs, you want to compete for a state championship. And I can't explain it. I really don't know how things have changed so much over time. It just has. And it's just the mentality of our program right now of, you not only want to, you want to do things the right way. You want to develop good people. You want to be a good person yourself. But at the end of the day, you also want to kick somebody's butt and have that mentality to do that week in and week out, and try to motivate kids during the off season to do that. That's kind of the tough part. And, but it's also a lot of fun.
Yeah. Coach, kind of a funny story. Looking back now, I remember the year that you guys won your first state championship. And I remember at the time thinking, man, this is really great for the conference to get some new blood in there. A team that hadn't won a state championship, usually you were seeing Galena was in there and Ackman was in there and Stockton, the names you had referenced. And I thought, man, it's great to see Lee-Win get a state championship. Little did I know what you were, had in the works here to win 5, in your time. Did you ever imagine 5 state championships that you're sitting on now?
No. When we won our first one, it seemed like it was so long overdue, and, really didn't know how to even go about it. So when we finally got that first one, it's like, okay, we got one. And then we had a down year after that. I guess not really a down year speaking now, I guess. But when we won it in 2013, it was really unexpected, because we were kind of injury riddled like we were this year. Our best running back, Tyler Oakley, was down most of the year, not playing well. Got really healthy, and we went on a great run in the playoffs. I mean, to be honest with you, I thought it would probably be an early exit in the playoffs. We just got a little bit better all the time, kind of like this year. And then in 2017, with Ravion Valentine, Mari's older brother, That team was one that, we beat Forreston twice, and we beat two really, really good football teams there. And we beat a great, great Tuscola team in the state championship game to go 14-0. That was one. We had a great team, but we also played some great teams. We earned that one. That was exhaustion right there. 2019, you just kind of had to keep it rolling. We had some great players. We had some great individual talents, and we got better as the year went on up front. And then, this year, we sit there and talk as coaches like, never thought we'd get one, much less two. And now we're sitting here with five, and it's, we're truly blessed. That's for sure.
Well, Coach, you've put your name in the ranks of all-time coaches in the NUIC, but you learned from maybe the all-time coach in the NUIC, and John O'Boyle at Stockton. You played for him, correct?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Tell me about playing for him, and then, when you became a coach, what'd you take from him? What do you still do maybe that you saw from him as a head coach?
I think you have to develop relationships with kids, which is probably what he did best. But by the same token, you got to be willing to still have the firm hand as well. It's kind of like your own kids. You want to have a great relationship with them, but you're still their dad, you're still their mom, and at the end of the day, you're calling the shots. And you want them to go out and grow up and be great people. And I think Coach O'Boyle thought the same thing about us when we were kids. And so I think in some respect, I do some things similar to him. He was a great guy.
Yeah. Well, actually, I read an article that Kyle Kampmeyer from NUICfootball.com put out a couple years ago, an interview with you, and you referenced that you only faced him one time as a head coach, and you said you won the game. What do you remember about that game? That had to be pretty emotional for you, or just kind of bizarre, standing across the sideline from the guy that you probably looked up to and obviously played for.
Right. I don't remember a whole lot about the game. As a matter of fact, I wouldn't even know what year it was at this point in time. But I remember that I reminded him very often that I was 1-0. And so that was always enjoyable. That was always fun. But he was a great guy. His son Dan graduated with me. He was our quarterback our senior year. Great guy. Yeah, learned a lot.
Well, Coach, speaking of great coaches, in the post-game press conference at the state championship game, do you remember who Mari Roby compared you to?
I don't.
He said you are the Bill Belichick of the NUIC. Now, as you spit out your water, is that a fair coaching comparison, or?
Bill Belichick has forgotten more about football than I'll ever know about football, so that's not a real fair comparison. But I appreciate that from Mari. I don't know.
What I'll ask you then is, when you look at college and NFL head coaches, who do you look at as far as the way they lead a team, the way they draw up offense or defense, or what guys stand out to you as guys you try to learn from?
Well, to be honest with you, I'm a huge Belichick fan.
Okay.
A lot of people are not. Over the years, I think he has done a whole lot of stuff with less talent than most teams in the league. Obviously, it helps to have Tom Brady, but year in and year out, they're great defensively. They rank near the top almost every year in the NFL in defense, and he's doing it with no-name guys. So they've done a little bit of everything. In the time that we've had kids at the University of Iowa, I've become a great Coach Ferentz fan. I think he does things the right way. I've been out there numerous times for workouts, for practice. And he's kind of that guy that I was telling you about. I think he truly, genuinely cares about what's going on with the guys in his program, not only during that time, but I think years after graduation as well. I like how he does things. I guess right now they'd be the two guys that I'd say that I really respect and admire, and when you see them on the sideline, you pay attention.
Yep. Well, Coach, that's all I got for you. Thank you so much for joining me. Enjoy a little bit of the off season, but I'm sure you guys will be back to work soon.
Yeah, we got kids working out now. Not a whole lot of them, luckily. I think they need time off as well. But most of our kids are 2 and 3 sport athletes. Most of them are 3 sport athletes. I think we've got about 8 high school kids in the weight room right now out of 55. So 55 players. So it's a good time to be around school. And as the spring rolls in here, hopefully in the next month or two, the excitement grows a little bit, and then once kids graduate, this will be a sad year. This group's done a lot of great things for us, but that's a great thing about high school coaching is you're gonna, May 31st rolls around and there's a new group of kids that come in, and new kids developing as leaders, and to me that's what makes coaching high school football so much fun.
Coach, before I let you go, I will ask you I saw a tweet from you a few months back about the importance of multiple sports and maybe not so much hitting the football hard in the spring and really doing a whole lot. Why so important for you as a head coach to emphasize that, multi-sport? I think a lot of coaches say it, but a lot of times it's easier said than done. Why so important for you to get those athletes doing other things? And then, once it's football time, we go back and we focus in and we dial in.
Right. Well, I think it's just like working different jobs in life. I think it makes you multidimensional. I think it makes you a better athlete. I think it keeps you healthy. There's nobody that needs to be in the weight room 5 days a week, and not playing another sport. I think it just makes you a better athlete, a better person overall. I'm not a big fan of, the year-round 7-on-7 stuff, the showcase stuff. I've made that pretty well known on social media as well, and I get a lot of crap for it, but it is what it is. It's my opinion, and I think there's most of your college and NFL coaches at this point in time would tell you the same thing. Go out, make yourself a well-rounded athlete, well-rounded person, and the high school years go by so fast that you're only there once. If you like playing baseball, play baseball. If you like running track or shooting hoops, play those sports, wrestle, do whatever. Kids give us excuses all the time. I want to work. I want to buy this car. This and that. You're going to do that for the next 40 years. And so be a kid when you can be a kid. I think the other thing that our coaches don't do, we try really hard to not do, is we try not to pull kids in one direction. I remember a few years ago, Kyle Benson tried to talk Sean Ormiston and Isaiah Bruce into not playing AAU basketball. He's our head basketball coach, and he's saying, hey, this summer, they went on their junior year, they went on a long postseason run in basketball, made it to sectional. We played 14 weeks of football, and he's telling, as a head basketball coach, he's telling them to take it easy in the summer and not play AAU basketball. So that's just kind of always been our mentality is play hard when you can play, when you can rest. But at the end of the day, be a kid too, go fishing with your buddies, swim in the pond somewhere, sneak into somebody's pool at night, whatever you do, but be a kid. Those days don't last long enough.
Well, as a father of a young athlete who will probably be in high school sooner than I want to admit, I think it's great. I think that's a great message. And I think it's something we all, I think we all struggle with it. You want to be the best and you want to be competing, but you want to let them be a kid too. So I think that's great. So
exactly.
Well, Coach, thank you so much for your time. We'll be in touch, and I'm sure we'll be, we'll be talking soon when football does get back up and rolling. So
that sounds good. Hey, thanks for having me. I enjoyed it, and you took it pretty easy on me too. So that was good.
All right, sounds good, Coach. We'll see you.
All right, sounds good. Thank you.